Okay. Everyone willing? Cool. Geshe Lhakdor, thanks for coming and talking to us.
My pleasure.
First, I just want to hear what your name is and sort of your position here at the library.
My name is Geshe Lhakdor. Geshe is title, but my actual name is just Lhakdor. And I'm director of the Library of Tibetan Monks and Archives here in Dharamsala.
So can you tell me, from your understanding, sort of the story of why His Holiness decided science was something worth learning and teaching?
Oh, His Holiness always thinks about learning from any discipline so long as it is useful to the humanity. And knowledge has no monopoly to anybody. Anybody can learn from all subjects. And especially in the case of science, whether you like it or not, is the one that is making the biggest impact in today's world. And especially as far as the material, physical realities are concerned, science has much to say. So therefore, His Holiness really wanted to learn the scientific insights with the Buddhist insights of the mind and the scientific insights of the physical body. So together, how can we contribute towards harmony, peace, and happiness of everybody? Physical well-being, mental well-being, yeah.
Was it easy to convince other Buddhists to study science?
Not so difficult, but not so easy also. Because in the beginning, the abbots of the different monasteries, they really don't have much. Now today, younger ones are there, so they have more awareness. Earlier, the very senior monks who came from Tibet, they really don't have much awareness about any modern subjects, especially science. And plus, their concern is how to maintain discipline and good study, good Buddhist study in the monastery. That's their concern. So they are not very much towards incorporating many other subjects because they fear that this might dilute their study, degenerate their Buddhist study. So they have this kind of apprehension. So there's a little bit reservation. So even after His Holiness is, telling the monasteries to study science, nobody will say no, but there is a little bit reluctance. Now things have changed, yes.
How does learning science change the way that monks and nuns think and see the world?
I think one way is the idea that Buddhism is the best philosophy, best religion. There's nothing we have to learn from others, science and other religions. Some people may have this kind of idea. So therefore, the scientific study provided them some avenue to get insights from other sources also. And then, as I mentioned already, as far as the physical realities are concerned, there is much more precise and in-depth knowledge from the science. So therefore, they realize that it is important to study them. Yeah.
Does a science curriculum play a role in preserving both Tibetan and Tibetan Buddhist culture?
I think so. Although personally, although I've been, overseeing this science study for so many years, but I don't take science as the most important thing for the Tibetans to study. Because for the Tibetans, the most important thing is preservation of Tibetan culture and Tibetan Buddhism, which is dying. Science is not dying, number one, right? Number two, in spite of the importance of scientific study, importance of the technology and things like that, but still, science and technology, thereby any human activity, is controlled by human thinking, human mind. So the manipulator of those subjects, science, technology, Buddhism, whatever, those who control, those who have the economical power to use these resources, if their mind is crooked, if their mind is just for money, just for power, then everything become dirty. Science will become dirty, technology will become dirty as we know, and religion also will become dirty. So therefore, based on my limited understanding, transformation of human mind. Transformation of human mind means to be able to see whole humanity as one, that we are closely interconnected. Our fate is, bound together. So therefore, without making stupid discrimination between nations, between men and women, things like that, it's important really to have this strong sense of responsibility and morality ethics, which means talk less about yourself, talk more about others, and see how you can benefit them. So long as that motivation, like the motivation of His Holiness the Lama, so long that is there, then everything will fall in the right place. If that is not there, then I see science and technology very dangerous. Already, now today, for example, the world is at least, the declared number of nuclear warhead is over 13,000. Declared. Many countries have not declared. And you and I know so well that just one nuclear atom bomb, how many people can be killed. So clearly, people use this for money, for power, there's no sense of responsibility. It's very dangerous.
First step is compassion.
Yes.
And then we can go towards science.
Exactly. And the reason that His Holiness is really, asking the monastics to study science is because His Holiness strongly feels any human activity, be it religious, scientific, whatever, so long as it is a human activity, it must benefit human beings. And until now, science is not against humanity. But science, the approach of science is just to find the way it is. It's not. Most of them, as far as I understand, most of them think it is not my responsibility where they are going to use the science, where they are going to use technology. Our job is to just present the reality. Yes, this is what we found. So he's only saying, no. You have a responsibility to ensure that what you discovered, what you found, should be used in the right way, in a beneficial way.
You said something earlier. You said, Tibetan Buddhism is dying. Science is not dying.
Exactly.
What would the world and science lose if the knowledge from Tibetan Buddhism was no longer around?
It's not just Buddhism. Buddhism is one part, but there are many religions and especially many spiritual practices. So if these spiritual practices related to the transformation of the mind is not there, then I don't think we'll be able to live harmoniously and happily. Because for a short time, it's like small kids, given with, multicolored toys to play with. And they enjoy, they're distracted, they enjoy, they think this is our life. But the grown up people, they say, okay, you can't spend so much time on this. This has not much meaning. So we are, the so-called grown-up people are having these toys in the form of various technological appliances. We have these appliances and we are distracted and confused with that. And then you look at your mobile phone and think, oh wow, this is so good. It's really like it's a toy. And by chasing these technological appliances and going out so much, but if you have forgotten yourself, who you are, what it means to be human being, the importance of inner resources, all these are now gradually, completely, forgotten because you are distracted, like the small kids. This is very dangerous. Because at the end of the day, just by chasing the sensual objects, you may have fleeting pleasures and maybe some fleeting happinesses, but reliable, long-lasting happiness will not be there. So therefore, I'm a little bit scared about the technological products, including artificial intelligence. I'm not saying that these technological products themselves are bad or good, but those people who use it, you don't have the power, I don't have the power, right? There are few people, rich people, who is controlling it.
How is science helping keep Tibetan Buddhism from being isolated.
Hmm?
How does science help? I'm you know I understand like it's really important for the Tibetan Buddhist culture to not be isolated. It's been isolated by different governments and stuff. And I'm wondering, is there a way that science helps Tibetan Buddhism like stay connected to the world?
Yeah, of course, because if you look at the original concept of science, or thereby the Buddhist notion of practice, the original motivation is same. The very English word science, which came from sorry, which came from just 1 second. So this English word science, which came from the Latin word scientia, means knowledge. So which means it is saying that you are suffering in different ways because you don't have the right knowledge. You are sweating in the hot of the sun because you don't have the knowledge of how to prepare air condition. Right? So with this kind of discovery and finding the knowledge to solve many human problems, of course, mainly related to the material and physical, realities, science really proved to be a blessing in many cases. And Buddhism also says ignorance is the root cause of all problems. Therefore, you need to get rid of ignorance, you need to get wisdom. So the focus of Buddhism is more on the internal state of the mind. Science is more for the external material. And we have a body and a mind, so we need both. So the aim and idea is same. But then, how it will be used, especially in the best ways, dependent upon who is the user, as I was saying. So when it goes in the wrong hand, people who have no sense of responsibility, no kindness, no compassion, science, religion, everything will be distorted and become dirty. Right? So original idea is same because both science and Buddhism are trying to explore the way things are, the reality. Right? Much of the suffering that we are encountering today is because we don't know the reality. Just to give you one example, the reality is that all this over 8 billion human population will be dead after 100 years from today. That's the reality. Now, if you are somebody who really has this deep understanding of this reality, then while you remain, in this world, maybe 30, 40 years, you will lead a sensible life, right? So people who don't have that understanding and knowledge, they think they can do anything.
With the Science for Monks and Nuns initiative, what sort of seeds are we planting for the future?
As you already mentioned, because we live in a world, whether you like it or not, we live in a world there is so much influence of science and technology and many other modern discoveries, innovations. We are living in this world. So it is important that you understand this and be a partner to many of these, useful inventions and teach Buddhism through those discoveries. Not to prove the authenticity of the Buddhist teaching based on science, that is not needed, but to deliver that message more effectively. You can explain the Buddhist teaching and then say this is also what the science says, this is what also science discovered. So that will become very convincing. And the purpose is not to, advertise Buddhism. The purpose is to really help change the wrong thinking of people. So that's the idea. So I was saying that even in terms of the one question that you asked earlier, probably I did not answer properly, is that it will also in that if you study science in that way, then it will also help the Tibetan culture, Tibetan Buddhism flourish. Because now over the years we have, for the first time in the Tibetan history probably, published the first scientific dictionary. Okay, so that means your language, vocabulary, everything is now improving, and you have all those vocabularies which is use in the modern world, in the international platform. So that way, and in fact, in many of my talks, I've been telling people Buddhism must make sense in today's world. It should not be just like a mythological explanation that there was a Buddha lived a long time before somewhere. You should tell them that this is useful for your happiness, peace in this very life. So therefore, you can explain this more effectively sometimes with some scientific findings. So that's why His Holiness is also talking about teaching, social, emotional, ethical learning. That means the teachings, the educations that you share must be based on scientific finding, evidence-based, and common sense, so that people really understand and able to know that this is important.
There was something His Holiness said. He's like, it does no good if my monks and nuns just sit down and chant. Like, we need to go out in the world and do something.
Exactly, absolutely. And I've been of late telling people that the monks and the nuns studying science should not be limited only to, studying the philosophical concept of science. In Buddhism, we study the Buddhist philosophy. And whatever you have studied, if you don't implement in your life, it really has not much benefit. So similarly, if you study just the philosophical concept of science, you may become very conversant in it, but if you don't apply, this is a small thing that I'm going to say on the inaugural day also. I'm already thinking about saying something that, science is for practical life, practical living. So do something for environment, do something for health, not just the theoretical ideas.
And I hear you saying it's like, get your hands dirty with it, like play with it and really explore it, not just talk about it.
Exactly. That's why many people today say that education means 3H: head, heart, and hand.
Can you explain that to me just a little more so that we can
The
understand?
head means that, of course, when it comes to gaining the knowledge, you need to think, right? And understand what is being taught. And then that the dry intellectual knowledge itself is not enough. The result of that understanding should be that you should be able to change your heart, become a compassionate and loving person. Now, the true indication that you have the knowledge and you have compassion can be demonstrated by doing, not just by sitting alone. And you may have compassion sitting alone, but that doesn't really make much impact to the rest of the world. So you need to get up, go and do things in the society.
I love that.
Yeah.
Henry and my team over there, do we have things that we want to make sure to cover? I guess we'd like to understand for this film just some of the context of why is the Tibetan community here tucked in the hills in Dharamshala?
Well, this is based on the decision of the Indian government and also based on the request made by the Tibetan leaders at that time. The Tibetan leaders, they requested that the place for His Holiness and some of the Tibetan, administration should be in a place which should be a little bit similar to Tibet, a little bit cool and a little bit snow mountain, things like that. But then the result was at that time this place became really very isolated. Now, of course, things have changed and traveling and communication is, of course, much easier. So not a big problem. Yeah.
Did I get a... Yeah. Cool. I guess we were curious just about hearing the story of His Holiness and Tibetan people being forced out, living as refugees here, like a state in exile. And I'd love to hear a little bit about what does it mean to run a government in exile, and what pressures do you face?
No. Generally speaking, of course, when you become a refugee, you have to face so many problems. You can't buy land. You don't have a particular kind of document to permanently stay in that place. So actually, in our case, normally, technically speaking, many people don't call us refugees. They call us stateless people because we did not leave our country because of civil war in Tibet or there was a flood in Tibet. We were forced to flee and leave our country, and our country is, snatched and robbed by the Chinese government. So we are stateless, right? So anyway, having lost one's country, having to live in some other country, of course, comes with so many difficulties and problems. So problems are there, challenges are there. But despite of all these problems, our host, the Indian government and the Indian people have been very, very kind. One reason for that may be we have a very close spiritual connection. Tibetans and Indians, or Tibet and India, have a very close spiritual connection lasting like more than 3,000 years. And Buddha was an Indian, not a Tibetan. And Tibetans followed Buddhism and respect Buddha, follow his teaching. So there's a very close spiritual connection. So because of that, when we came into exile, also the Indian people respected His Holiness Dalai Lama and helped the Tibetan people as much as possible. So therefore, and then under the leadership of His Holiness Dalai Lama, we established this Central Tibetan Administration, which nobody calls it a government, but tacitly it is accepted almost like a government, right? So therefore, we are fully functioning and have needed relation with other people, other countries, and also like for example, we have Department of International Relations, we have Department of Home to look after the situation of the Tibetan people living in India, things like that. So it's pretty much like a government in exile, although people may not call it. So therefore, we can proudly and safely say Tibetan refugees or stateless Tibetans have been one of the most successful refugees in the world community. This is because of the leader and our culture. We have a good leader, so therefore, right from the beginning, he planned about giving proper education to the Tibetan children, and then established the Central Tibetan Administration. So everything, is going very well. But that doesn't mean that we have no problem. Okay.
I understand, science as an initiative started with His Holiness. He was emphatic that this should happen.
Yeah.
Is that still the case, or is it woven in at a deeper level now?
It is still the case.
In 50 years, how will science be encouraged?
It is still the case because His Holiness himself always says, if I had not become a monk, I could have become an engineer. So he had that bent of mind of exploring, dismantling his watch and seeing what is there inside, things like that. So here he had the scientific mind. And this scientific mind, to some extent, maybe his inborn, inclination. But on the other hand, when you study Buddhism, it always encourages to caution everything and don't accept anything blindly. That is the Buddha's teaching. So therefore, that way of thinking is also there. That must have contributed towards His Holiness thinking also. And then the real science. I'm not talking about the fake science. When we talk about the real science or real teaching of the Buddha, I can say this: many of these important features of these disciplines should be perennial. So there is no reason why you should stop studying it after a few years, because some of these really thinkers, their mind is not biased, like Einstein and many other thinkers. Their mind is not biased. They are simply looking for truth, searching for truth, and those scientists are very concerned about well-being of humanity. Now today I don't know how many of them are. Unfortunately, many of these, great scientists are employed by the government. So they get a lot of money and They have to do what the government is saying. It looks like that. I don't know the depth, looks like that. So in a way, they are also in a helpless situation, right?
How do you measure, when it comes to teaching monks and nuns and the monastic community science, how do you measure long-term success?
Long-term success means through your study, if that study knowledge is helping you to develop a mind which takes responsibility, which thinks about well-being of everybody, which thinks about reducing the problems and sufferings of at least, if not all sentient beings, at least humanity, then I would say you're on the right track. If that is not, they are not only scientific study, but even the Buddhist study. You may have studied Buddhism for 25 years. You may have this big name of a Geshe, not just Geshe, but the topmost Geshe scholar. And if his mind is not really compassionate and transformed, and in fact that knowledge becomes another source of becoming arrogant. So this is like medicine becoming poison. This is very dangerous. Then I would prefer people are less educated.
I'm hearing like it's when you think you know, that's when you think you know everything, or you know you're right.
Yeah.
That's when you sort of are missing the point.
Mm.
And you said something when you were speaking to Lori about, you have one mouth and 2 ears.
Mm.
Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
I'm wondering if you could describe that. I think that
No.
well.
I was saying that even if you look at your physical structure, you have one mouth, that means speak less. 2 ears, meaning listen more about the truth. 2 eyes, see the truth yourself, not just listen to rumors spread by other people. And then the 2 long arms, good for hugging, not for hitting. And then the nice fingers, good for shaking hand, not for hitting others. Right? And then if you look at the teeth, it's not like a tiger or lion. Look at your nails, it is not like a hawk or an eagle. So these are not really meant for killing other people. And then what is wrong that human being is bringing so much destruction today in the world? The amount of pollution, the amount of conflict, and all the bad things that is happening today are primarily created by human beings, not by snakes, not by tigers. Why? Because you are misusing your intelligent brain, human intelligence. Your intelligence is getting corrupted. Therefore, education is important. Be it scientific education, be it Buddhist education. Through knowledge, through study, you should know for what purpose human life should be used. So therefore, knowledge is important. So education is not reading, writing, mathematics. Education is for human flourishing, human happiness. Right?
Tell us about the Tibetan Library books.
Yeah, that's great. The Tibetan Library next door. Why is it so important to have a place where you can store and keep safe this knowledge?
This is important because we are, as we discussed already, we are in exile, and majority of the Tibetan population is Tibet. We are a tiny fraction outside Tibet, and in Tibet, Tibetans really have not much freedom to preserve their own culture, own language. In fact, China is even today, right now, more than ever, systematically trying to destroy Tibetan language, which is the root of Tibetan culture and religion. I think they follow this maxim coming from some of the communist leaders from Russia. I think they say that to destroy people, destroy the language. So that's what they are practicing. And they are repeatedly saying everything should be Sinicized. Everything should be of the Chinese characteristic, whatever they mean. So they are bent to destroy everything. So during such a risky situation, the hope relies on the Tibetans living in free country. So therefore, it is very, very important that we preserve our language, our culture, our religion. This is because, not because the language or religion culture belongs to the Tibetans. Yes, we have right to preserve it. More than that, the Tibetan culture is a world cultural heritage. And many, thousands, millions of non-Tibetans are getting a lot of wisdom and benefit from Tibetan culture, Tibetan Buddhism. So therefore, Buddhism is relevant. Tibetan culture is relevant. Not only relevant, it is really proving as a boon to many people who are suffering from loneliness, from depression, and many other problems because of not knowing how to live, how to think. So the process of right thinking, right conduct is taught in Buddhism. So therefore, this, even if it is very small, it's, I think, very, very important.
We've heard it described as like there's this forest, and in the forest there are these flowers
Yeah,
of wisdom.
yeah,
And if you cut down the whole forest, like you don't even know what you're
exactly,
destroying.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's why in a challenging note, during many of my interviews, in a challenging note, I tell the people that not only the Tibetans, you also, the other people from other countries, you also have a responsibility to help preserve this Tibetan culture and Tibetan religion. Because the struggle that we are making today is non-violent and peaceful. I don't think there are many countries who had, relentlessly fought for their justice and truth, non-violently and peacefully for over now 60 years, 66 years. So if we fail today, if our struggle fail, then next time if somebody talks about non-violence, negotiation and dialogue, people will say, go ahead with your non-violence and dialogue. What did the Dalai Lama get? What did the Tibetans get? So this is going to set a very bad example, right? So not only Tibetans, I think every sensible person, every thinking person has responsibility to preserve and support all those non-violent, peaceful activities, happening everywhere in any part of the world.
How does science help with that nonviolent resistance?
Science, because science also, science means investigating the reality. And through scientific, instrument or through scientific analysis, when you investigate the reality, then it is found that harmony is important, right? Harmony with the nature, harmony among people, thereby is important, right? I don't think any scientists say that violence is important, killing is important. Although, unfortunately, we have all these destructive machines, invented by science and so forth. But individually, I don't think anybody will promote killing and fighting. So therefore, science is also towards non-violence and peace.
So they're aligned.
Yes, yes, yes.
We've noticed, we have the library and parliament and the science center. It's right there. Can you describe to me, like just the importance and integration that science, like even in this little block, it seems like it's quite prominent. Is that true? That it's taken quite a prominent role in
It's taking a prominent role, and then, of course, in accordance with the guidance of His Holiness Dalai Lama, the Tibetan Parliament or Tibetan Central Tibetan Administration, everybody recognizes the importance of education and thereby importance of scientific education. Also, science is taught in all the schools, right? So there is support. So, of course, all these institutions can coexist and help each other. And in my own personal case, the reason that I constructed the science center was initially I encouraged the monasteries to come up with their science center in each of the monasteries, because when you talk about teaching science, unless there is something physical, concrete to see in the monastery, unless there is something concrete that the monks are doing, nuns are doing in their respective monastery and nunneries, the higher ones, the abbots and the others will, and the monks will not pay much attention. But if you have a place there where you can, see something, scientific on your laptop or on the posters, many of these things are there, then gradually people get attracted to it. So that's why I encourage them to come up with a science center. In the beginning, science center means really like it's not easy to get a big building, so they'll give you one small room, the authorities will give you just one small room. Then gradually they recognize it's important, and then they, make it a little bit bigger. Now almost all the monasteries in South India, some of them have very big science centers already. So after all this has been coming up, then I spoke to Bobby Sager. Bobby, we have been running this science activities for so long, and every time we run a project, particular 1 month or 3 weeks program in a particular monastery, every time we have to request them, please give us a place. Then we have to pay money for them. You see. So don't you think it is a good idea to start a science center here in the library, so that many of these workshops can be conducted here without having to pay extra money? So Bobby said, wonderful. This is how this science center in the library came up.
Do you know the story Field of Dreams?
Huh?
Do you know the story Field of Dreams?
Field of Dreams?
Yeah.
I don't know.
In the story, they say, if you build it, they will come.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, that is in fact one of the strategies that I adopted, not only in the science center, but in the library also. Because I started constructing few facilities here and there, be it the sitting place that you see outside, or the small coffee shop that you see there. Because when you have these facilities, people come, and then when people come, then give them education. That's my strategy. Yeah.
Anything come up for you?
Nothing.
Okay. I have one more question.
Okay.
Can you describe just how important the integration of science is to His Holiness?
Very important, as I mentioned earlier. It's really like, asking about the importance of body and mind get connected. So science basically represents, for me, science basically represents the physical world. Buddhism represents the human beings, sentient beings living in that physical world. When you come to the sentient beings, then science represents the body of that human being. Buddhism represents the mind. When you come to the mind, science talks about brain. Buddhism talks about consciousness in its subtle level can be separated from the brain, and it talks about future lives also. So therefore, it's very important to learn from each other.
Okay, we have one more question about the future of science education. What do we need to continue to grow the monastic science education? Or what do we need to push this forward to further the impact science can have on helping the world and through monks and nuns?
But as I mentioned, for me personally, I don't take science as the most important thing. While I see the importance of it, and while I see the importance of continuous education of science, but I don't see that as the most important thing. But the continuous science education is important because more new generations are coming up. They don't have exposure to science and modern education. They should have that opportunity. And the purpose, as I mentioned earlier, is how best we can contribute to the harmony and well-being of the planet, of the people on this earth. So therefore, this is a very, very beneficial project. Because if you talk just about Buddhism, just about mind, there will not be much material progress, as was the case in Tibet, right? So we need material well-being also. But material well-being doesn't mean that you go for more than what you need. Unfortunately, today we are going more than what we need. And a clear indication is the pollution of the air and the environment that you see today, right? So today, unfortunately, because of this lack of contentment inside, people are just exploring the water, the forest, the natural resources, the minerals, thinking that they are endless. But reality is anything that is material, physical has a limitation. You cannot make unlimited progress from limited resources. If you try to do that, you will end up destroying everything, the planet, which is the sign of this destruction is already visible. So unless you have some of this check and balances within your mind, as Mahatma Gandhi said, there is enough for everybody's need, not enough for everybody's greed. So here, Buddhism and other spiritual traditions really can help how to maintain, some kind of contentment.
And it's important that there's a seat at the table for Buddhist ideas, is what I'm hearing.
Yes.
And how does science help that seat, be secured?
Yeah, you can now, as I mentioned earlier, as far as the physical matter is concerned, science is very good because you're able to see things which your naked eye can't see, right? You can show things which you manually cannot show. So show that how the glaciers are melting today. Show that, right? And many of the problems that we see in the world, like depression and everything, comes from lack of contentment and due to thinking just about oneself and completely forgetting others. So all this can be demonstrated today. So it's important to demonstrate. But unfortunately, my observation is science is actually, honestly speaking, not as impactful as technology. Technology is given in the hand of everybody. Everybody has a mobile phone, things like that. And they just keep on seeing what is there. And somebody feeds it primarily for commercial purposes. Right? The real scientific ideas, unless you make an attempt to get it, it is not so widely circulated. It is there, but not enough. So I think you need to really threaten people. They look, this is what is happening with the forest. This is what is happening with the nuclear bombs. You need to bombard people and tell them how many people can be killed just by explosion of just one atom bomb. You need to tell. Majority of people have no idea. And majority of the people, for example, living in Dharamsala, have no idea that we are living in earthquake zone number 5. See? So you need to tell them. So that might help people to, start thinking and doing something.
I think I want to wrap things up because I know you got to get out of here. And the thing I'm just curious to get at, and you can tell me if you don't believe this is true.
Yeah.
But in being here and talking to people, it sounds like, Tibetan Buddhism is so crucial it holds so much knowledge that the world needs more now than ever. But it's important for them to have a seat at the table. And it seems like this idea that science sort of helps them keep that seat. And so other people are like, oh no, these people are not just chanting, in a temple up on the hill in the clouds. They're here with us and they want to work together. So does that ring true to you?
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. As I was saying, that it is not your knowledge and talking, your implementation, your practice in daily life, which will help people, get convinced about the efficacy of that religion. So, in the field of social activities, the monks and nuns and other so-called Buddhists, they should really come out and do philanthropic activities, beneficial activities in protecting the environment, purifying the water, whatever. So many things can be done. but there is not much awareness, right? It takes time. It's not easy. So that should be. So therefore, in collaboration with the science, and we are already making some small short documentaries. I had this idea a long time back that some of this Buddhist thinking, the efficacy of this Buddhist philosophy and thinking should be demonstrated through scientific findings. So together we can really make an impact. For example, Buddhism has always been talking about impermanence, right? Now this talking is good. People might think, okay, one day I'll die, but it's not so impactful. But now with the scientific instrument, you can show how the internal organs are functioning, how fragile they are. And it is explained in Buddhism, saying that to be able to go to bed and to be able to wake up next morning is magic. Now this can be demonstrated, you see. So with this kind of teachings, and then if you demonstrated how human body functions, it will be very impactful. Mm. I said this many times, but I'm yet to find somebody who wants to collaborate with me, who is good in all these instruments. You know.
Well, hey, Lhakdor, thank you so much for sitting here. I know you got to get to your class, but we so appreciate your time. And
thank you.
Thanks for sharing with us and putting up with us.
Thank you.
And we're excited to see you around this week. And I'm sure we'll film another scene too in the library at some point.
Yeah, okay, sure. Thank you.